This presentation and the accompanying oral commentary may include forward-looking statements that are subject to risks, uncertainties, and other factors beyond our control. Our actual results, performance, or achievements may differ materially and adversely from those anticipated or implied by such statements because of various risk factors, including those detailed in our quarterly report on Form 10-Q for the fiscal quarter ended January 31st, 2019, filed with the SEC. Any future product or roadmap information presented is intended to outline general product direction, is not a commitment to deliver any functionality, and should not be used when making any purchasing decision.
There have always been the naysayers, the skeptics, the defenders of how things are, those who say you can't when you believed you could. To all the visionaries, the disruptors, the agents of change, here's to you, and to the story of one company's journey from hungry underdog to humble game changer. When you start with an idea that data centers should be so simple that infrastructure feels invisible, the hurdles become more apparent, uprooting a massive legacy investment. But with a few early believers on board, followed by the engineers and designers who shared a vision of change, Nutanix began building a future that only a few dreamed was possible. This was an underdog committed to doing things differently, whose customers believed in the idea of data centers without SAN and began embracing hyper-converged infrastructure as the new normal. Compute, storage, virtualization all became invisible. Major partnerships were forged, giving customers freedom of choice. And while everyone else was catching up, Nutanix was innovating, making not just infrastructure, but clouds invisible. Customers began embracing a pure software approach, and with it, the freedom of hypervisors, hardware, and clouds. And as data centers and clouds became invisible, so did the naysayers. A new enterprise journey from modern data centers to hybrid clouds was now a reality. The company only a few had believed in was now the one defining what's next.
They say it's not the destination, but the journey that counts. I think for us, both really matter. We've become a good company in the past 10 years, thanks to our partners, our customers, and our people. We need to keep challenging ourselves in how we can get to being a great company. We're very excited for where we're going, where the next areas of disruption will be. I promise our best is yet to come.
Welcome to .next 2019. Now please welcome to the stage the believers, dreamers, and builders of the first 10 years of Nutanix.
Our journey with Nutanix started trying to accomplish what I'm sure many of you were, how to crack the VDI performance code. We threw high-performance servers at it, didn't work. Then we added SSD shells, still not great. And when keeping the lights off in my office so users couldn't find me stopped working, it was time for a change. Fortunately, in 2013, we were introduced to Nutanix, a platform that promised a stable, reliable, better-performing technology for our VDI environment. Little did we know that this introduction would not only come through on its VDI promise, it would disrupt the way we thought about virtual infrastructure for years to come. A Nutanix engineer braving the Minnesota code worked to install and configure our first block. Because of its overwhelming success, we immediately adopted Nutanix as our VDI solution. The users were happy, and I was able to keep my lights on. Shortly thereafter, we took it a step further. We were hesitant at first to replace our entire server SAN environment, but because of the success of the VDI deployment, we were excited to see what Nutanix could do with server workloads. The result? It made our expectation. That's why now all 8 of our offices and 2 data centers runs on Nutanix. This has saved us on licensing, hardware costs, and my engineers' time. Our relationship with Nutanix has grown not just because of our success, but Nutanix's excellent customer service. We gave suggestions, and they listened. Every AOS update included features and improvements that customers were asking for. It made us feel like we were part of the growth of the company. Lobilo values its relationship with Nutanix and are excited to see what's next. Thank you.
I wish you could have been there. In fact, a few of you may have been. It was 2014 at the first ever Nutanix Now Partner Conference in Denver, Colorado. Sitting there at the Grand Hyatt Hotel, surrounded by 60 other innovators, partners, and visionaries. My business partner, Steve Hatch, and I, we looked each other in the eye, we looked around the room, and we knew we were getting involved in something exciting. Nutanix wasn't a household name. It was a technology startup and a clothing company. But we knew we were going to get involved in something big. We knew that Nutanix had the people, the personality, and the ability to change the industry forever. Fast forward 5 years later, the culture has not changed. I was on a support call with one of my customers, and the engineer in California was going off shift and handing the call off to the next available engineer. That first engineer called me a half hour later, personally, from his home with his newborn baby in hand, checking in to make sure that our customer was out of the critical issue that they were dealing with. That is a level of commitment that I've never seen before. For myself, my company, and our customers, to have that level of dedication and client satisfaction is a game changer. Thank you.
As a serial early adopter, I don't invest in products. I invest in people with vision. It was 2012, a time when we were recovering as a business and needed to rethink our strategy. I was disillusioned with the status quo. There had to be a better way. We needed private cloud with all the benefits of public under our roof and able to keep pace with our ambitions. I went to lunch with a couple of guys from VMware. They told me, there's this intrepid little HCI company called Nutanix. Mate, if they knew today what they knew back then, there's no way they would have picked up that tab. I'm consistently amazed that Nutanix was able to replace their legacy structure, delivering greater performance and business continuity while making that infrastructure feel invisible. For the past 7 years, I've been a Nutanix customer, both in the role as fierce critic and passionate advocate. Yet, I'm as excited as day one. A favorite memory of our journey was flying through the Grand Canyon, surrounded by grandeur and friends, upgrading a cluster more than 12,000 kilometers away from my phone. Nutanix has given me time and memories, irreplaceable time with family and friends. So cheers. Here's to the next decade.
The best part about working for a high-growth company is being able to reinvent yourself every couple of years. As employee number 26, I've been with Nutanix for 8 of its 10-year history and held 4 very different roles in that time. From engineering, to services, to field readiness, and now customer success. I knew Nutanix was special during that first job interview, back in the small 2-room office with the putting green on the floor and the beer fridge in the corner. Even then, I knew customers who would embrace this new way of building and managing their data center. And I've helped hundreds of customers since then do just that and transform the way they run their business. It's been an incredible ride, and I can't wait to see what's next. And now, I have the great pleasure of introducing our first builder, Nutanix founder, chairman, and CEO, Dheeraj Pandey. Now, Dheeraj, before we go, I was wondering if you knew what the customary gift for a 10-year anniversary is.
Now you're really putting me on a spot. It looks like a bezel of sorts.
Well, we thought it was gold, but apparently we have to wait a little longer before we can give you one of those.
Okay.
So, on behalf of everyone, we wanted to present you with your 10-year anniversary gift. You're correct. It's the first Nutanix bezel.
Thank you so much.
And a Nutanix license plate.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your business. Thank you.
I'll take those backstage for you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank everybody enough. This was poignant. Just looking at the first, customers and employees and partners to be on stage here. This reminds me of day one. It just took me back in time to 10 years ago, and every year has been something. Just looking at Megan. Megan joined this company sometime early 2012, and it's been 8 years for her. And as she was talking about reinvention, it's just reflective of what the company has gone through every couple of years. And we've always had naysayers. Today, I'm not going to talk about vision and future, because I know there's a lot of new people in the room as well. What we really want to do is talk about the past, talk about the last 10 years, and have some fun along the way as well. Because things have actually happened in the last 10 years that might look obvious now, but they're not back then. So today, I want to really spend some time looking back at the last decade and learning some things about who we are and where we think we can take this bird in hand to really make it the two in the bush, as good as the two in the bush itself. So the last 10 years, if you think about a journey itself, we've had customers. We've had more than 10,000 customers in the last 10 years. We've had customers, as you saw, in 150 countries, employees in more than 45, 50 countries. And the overall story itself, the mission of the company, has pretty much been the same. It's about making things invisible. It's making even ourselves invisible. We set out to make the SAN invisible. We set out to make virtualization invisible. And in the last 3 years, we said, what does it mean to make ourselves invisible? Because that's the best place to be, when we can be vulnerable and say, look, let's make ourselves invisible. And that's about the digital transformation of the company to software and subscription and cloud, which we don't fully understand. I can tell you that there's a tech behind it, there's implementation, execution, challenges of transformation of being a software company and a subscription company and such. We don't fully understand everything, but what I can tell you is that the word invisible is so calm and peaceful. Just when we think about it, like, what does it mean to make ourselves invisible? It really makes my adrenaline pump, actually. There's something there about making ourselves invisible as well. So I was asking this question, like, who are we? So that the audience here also understands Nutanix. And there's a lot of noise in the market about cloud and hyperconvergence and cloud computing in general, so public cloud, private cloud. There's a lot of hype around the words. But if you take a step back and say, OK, take a deep breath, like, who are we really? Not just for our employees, but for our partners and customers out there. What have we done well? And I came up with these 3 Ds that I thought really represented Nutanix and its passion. D for data, D for design, D for delivery. And if one of my friends out here, Deepak Malhotra, said, you should throw in a D for Dheeraj. I'm like, no, let's just. But we are a deep data company, a deep design company, and a deep delivery company. We'll talk about these 3 Ds as well through the course of the next 30 minutes. The first D that we actually worked on was, let's make storage into pure software and have it run as an app next to your apps. So your app and our app run together on a common hypervisor substrate and runs on this bunch of servers, nothing but a bunch of servers. And we thought it was very, very innovative because we're really up-leveling data to the application folks. Like, let's deliver data to the app folks. And that was the first big sort of risk we took to say, look, I think storage can be an app. It doesn't have to be a separate box. It doesn't have to be a separate budget. It doesn't have to be a separate set of certifications and such. And app folks loved it, starting with Citrix and Horizon, and then going on to Microsoft and so on. And this, I was looking at our archives of pictures. This was our messaging probably 7 years ago. Pretty childish, for looking back now. Say that we actually have bullets going in, especially the lawyers that we hired in the last 3-4 years would never have approved of this. But the more things change, the more they remain the same. I figured, what has changed in the last 10 years? We just have to add a V onto this, and probably things would actually remain the same. Well, I'm just kidding. We have grown up, so that's why this just kidding out there. But I don't think we've grown up, so that's why this picture is here. Design, I think this was designed from 2012 timeframe. This is Flex and Adobe when Steve Jobs and Adobe and Shantanu were still fighting for what's right. Is it HTML5? Is it Flex? And we picked actually Flex back then. And JC is here. He was on stage. And we had all these discussions on should we actually pick up early on HTML5 or continue to work on Flex. This is our first UI. And we thought we had actually done justice to what consumer grade meant back in the day. But the one thing that we really were confident of was the fact that we're not going to put a tab, a graphical tab in vCenter, because we knew that was not the future. We had to work with vCenter as a database, as an API integration, but not give up our experience, because customer experience mattered a lot. So anyway, this was the first design from 2012 timeframe. And of course, we delivered our stuff in appliances, and most people said, you guys are software people, why would you want to even ship boxes and appliances when you don't even understand what hardware really meant? And we took this very bold approach of saying, look, we've got to put flesh and blood behind this concept, which is extremely nebulous at best. Like, what do you mean there's no storage? Like, oh, well, the storage is all pure software. Like, where is the storage? Well, it's still in these boxes. And we had these 2 first customers, the first 2 shipments, Intrepid and Weil. In fact, the team is sitting right here up in front. They truly are VIPs for us because they've grown with us over the course of the last 8 years. But the first 2 shipments were Intrepid and Weil, one a federal customer, one a very large law firm in the country itself. And we've learned a lot from them, and we've transformed each other ever since in the last. So thank you so much for really doing this with us over the course of our last decade itself. And this is Kelly Olivier, first tweet that he made when he deployed Nutanix back in 2011. We delivered it so well that Kelly became an employee almost 6 years ago, or more than 6 years ago, and is a very happy federal sales engineer for Nutanix for the last 6-7 years. Now, talking about data 3 years hence, from 2012 to 2015, we said we're going to work on serious things. A lot of naysayers said you can't work on things that are really going to serve server virtualization needs because this architecture is too limited. You can't actually scale compute and storage independent of each other, performance and capacity independent of each other. You can't fit all the apps. And we said, no, we're going to prove the naysayers wrong. We're going to work on all the things that are considered expensive and need different kinds of boxes, a replication box and a backup box and a primary storage box and stuff. We said, we'll put it all together in pure software. And let's unleash Microsoft and all of VMware server virtualization workloads on top of it. And it was a really, really lesson-filled journey for us, extremely, I would say, toiling as well, because we had to work hard on making a lot of workloads work well and fit in this new architecture. I think design was a challenge one more time because the old world was pretty messy. People were having to plan for simple things like lifecycle management software and upgrades and putting like teams of storage, network, and compute and servers and virtualization and app people to come together, and every 6 months they would plan for upgrades. When in the public cloud, people are saying you can do continuous innovation, continuous consumption, continuous upgrades, and none of that was happening on-prem. So we said we're going to deliver a new design which raised the bar for what it meant to have continuous innovation, continuous consumption of software every week, every month, every quarter itself, and all being done with no downtime at all. We thought back in the day it was a very, very important innovation to give weekends back to all our operators and administrators. And again, one of our customers at the time from Australia, tweeted this back then, and he also became one of our employees for the last 6, 7 years. He's been one of our employees, actually. Now, I talked about HCI was such a, it was one of those configuration form factors that was really hard to be flexible. People said you can only get black, and all the color that you can get is black. And we said we have this thing upon us where we have to make it highly configurable. The infrastructure has to be highly configurable. And we worked really hard making sure that you get flash heavy, memory heavy, compute heavy, GPU heavy, all these kinds of servers together, including two ends of the barbell, compute only, which we introduced. Most people thought that hyperconvergence is all about compute and storage. And we said, no, it can be compute only as well if you actually have those needs. And it can be a SAN grid as well. So all of a sudden, the company that was saying no SAN, with same software, could deliver a SAN grid as well, because you wanted to really mimic 3-tier with our software. And we did all this stuff to really make sure we delivered for every workload possible out there. Now, we also delivered through OEMs, and this was highly contrarian, very controversial almost 4 or 5 years ago. Why would you compete with yourself if you have a good business going? And we knew that the only way to really go and become a company that can be an operating systems company was to deliver this technology, the soul of the company, through someone else's flesh and blood. And this is where the servers came in, the OEMs came in, Dell EMC and Lenovo in the last 3, 4 years. Now, data became a bigger and bigger challenge for us. People said, now, how we deliver remote office, branch office, where the control plane is centralized, but the data plane itself is dispersed and distributed. And we took this upon us because we knew that a lot of compute and a lot of applications will be at the edge, will be where people are, where machines are, where the factories are, inside hospitals and shop floors and places like that. And we still had to deliver a cloud-like form factor. And that's how we delivered remote office, branch office replication. There's a lot of stuff that we had to do to really make replication work, for example. And it was really difficult for us to make sure to understand what it meant to have distributed computing and still have a centralized control plane from which you can upgrade and monitor, which is where the design challenge really came in. I think one of the big design challenges in the last 3 years that we solved for was visualization. We got into networks. And this is one of those examples of visualization and design that we still don't have a full control on. Imagine doing 10,000 servers together, and we're scratching our heads to make sure we can make microsegmentation actually be one click. It's that hard right now, where you have to really roll in professional services and make a 12-month project out of things like software-defined security. And our goal right now is to make these things so simple that even application administrators can go and configure very geeky, nerdy things like microsegmentation itself. In fact, HV was born almost 4 or 5 years ago and was a really, really insightful observation made by a couple of our engineers that we can make virtualization invisible. We delivered hyperconvergence through an invisible hypervisor. 99% of the people we spoke to said we shouldn't do it because virtualization was commodity. It's a saturated market. There's no room and place for yet another virtualization software, yet another hypervisor. But we had a plan. We said, look, we are not talking about the what. We're talking about the how and the why. And now virtualization is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. There's no magic quadrant for it. There shouldn't be a budget for it. There shouldn't be certifications for it. There shouldn't be teams of people managing something that is a means to an end. Virtualization is not a thing anymore. It's part of an experience. That experience is a cloud experience. So extremely controversial topic for 3-4 years, but where we have come in the last 4 or 5 years, you'll realize how much of a tab we had on things like ease of use and delivering HCI through a hypervisor. Now, the other delivery challenge that we also faced was, okay, fine, we have to open this up and make it pure software because people really want to buy at scale. Software appreciates, hardware depreciates over time, and people really want to understand how to buy at scale and volume and EPAs and ELAs. Big challenge for an appliance company in the eye of public markets to really go transform itself and make itself a pure software company. That's what we did over the course of the last couple of years, to deliver things that mattered to large enterprises. The large enterprise customers were used to buying software at scale, and we had to do all of this while we were at 35,000 feet, change the wings in the plane, if you will. Now, data became, even deeper passion for us in the last couple of years. You see, we went from not just virtual machine data, but we went to block storage and IoT storage and files and object storage and database and so on. So, we really have expanded the scope of data in the last couple of years. And the best part is that it didn't take us a decade to build some of these things because they leverage the core. Some of these actually have become apps, like object storage is now a cluster service that runs on our core infrastructure. And now a lot of the lessons that we learned about what it meant to really deliver reliability and availability and security and fault tolerance, they were already paid for because we had paid the dues with AOS. So AOS becomes the platform on top of which we deliver a lot of other data services. And I think a lot of this is also keeping in mind what does it mean to deliver data and design, not just for IT operators, but also for developers for the first time. Things like Era for database audience and things like objects and files for developers, it's really resonating well with a lot of our customers now. Design, actually, again, Prism Pro, for those of you who are our Prism Pro customers, it's our fastest growing product in the last 3 years. We really bet hard on this idea of distributed control plane. And when I say distributed control plane, I mean a scale-out architecture that sits in the middle of your entire computing infrastructure and manages a lot of applications sitting at the edge. And it's a really hard problem. We're still trying to figure out scale. Many of the customers have come out and said, make it even more scalable. You folks have done a really good job of your data plane and AOS, but make the control plane even more scalable. But in terms of design and simplicity and making it frictionless, I think nobody can touch us. Calm is another one where we said, look, let's go and build design for developers. In fact, developers within IT. What does it mean to really do automation and orchestration through UI, as opposed to writing a ton of code? Blueprints was one such thing. App Store is another one where people are saying, I didn't want to drag and drop, click on things rather than having to spend a ton of time doing tickets and provisioning VMs and networks and storage and things like that. This whole concept of App Store has failed in the last 10, 15 years of enterprise. We've talked about enterprise App Store forever, but we believe that what we have in terms of the grasp of design, we can really take the notion of App Store to the next level. Frame, which we think is a very bold move for a company that was very good at virtual desktops in the last 10 years, is one of its big workloads. Almost a quarter of our workloads is desktops, even today. We said, what does it mean to go higher up and own the app itself? And by the way, this time, this app is a multi-cloud app, and it's a massive challenge in design. And it's a massive challenge in design because it's multi-cloud, it's cloud native, it's browser native. We're delivering a desktop experience through a browser itself. And to talk more about this, the design challenges and delivery challenges, I'd love to welcome Nikola Bozinovic, our VP and GM of Frame. Nikola, come on board.
every 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nikola. So tell us more about Frame. Talk about the design challenges, the fact that you have to make it simpler and deliver it in a multi-cloud world.
So I'm here to talk about our cloud-native, browser-native virtual desktops. And in the last 8 months or so, since we joined Nutanix, we're really focused on a couple of things starting from design. And for us, it was really important to make it simple, to make it one click, and to really enable people who are not VDI expert to use it. That was our real focus. We also focused on security. And we know that your most prized asset is your company data. And we work really, really hard to build in things into Frame to make it secure. And in fact, Frame is the only desktop as a service that has FedRAMP ready certification. That's very important for our public sector customers. And then finally, we think about helping you move faster. If you move faster, your business grows faster. Our solution is to deliver a great service all the time, things that get better all the time. So it's not just a couple of times a year when you get innovation, you get it all the time. So we really built this one-click, secure service, and we thought really hard over the last 5 or 6 years about what does it mean to run a control plane in the cloud? What does it really mean to orchestrate workloads that are on different clouds? And sometimes on very different clouds, like Microsoft Azure and AWS. And we also thought about how to run things at scale, how to run things securely, but most importantly, we listened to you. We listened to our most important customers, partners, and what we heard is that you want a choice. That you want the choice of running things in a public cloud, but also in a private cloud.
So the desktop is where the app is. The desktop and the apps cannot be at different places.
Exactly. So desktop is where your app is, desktop is where your data is. So I really couldn't be more excited to share with all of you that as of today, Frame can orchestrate and provision one-click secure desktops on your Nutanix cluster.
Woo. Awesome. So it's a true hybrid cloud where the controller is running in a SaaS environment, but the data plane, the backplane itself, is running in your data center.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome.
And
do you have something to show for
just
that?
To make, absolutely. Just to make it clear, this is not an announcement and a tech preview. This is generally available today.
Yeah. And this is something that lawyers have been telling him for the last couple of days.
OK, so let's do a live demo. And we're going to do this start to finish in 90 seconds to show you how
So this is Prism Central.
this can be done. Exactly. So this is Prism Central. What I'm going to start here is a process of preparing my cluster. So again, we're going to do 90 seconds, start to finish, have your cluster connected to Frame. You basically need 3 things. You need to have your cluster running with AHV 510 and up. That's number 1. Number 2 is you have to prepare your gold masters. That's very easy. You take any Windows or Linux operating system image, run our agent. That's basically it. And then the last thing is you need to sign up for Frame. That's super easy. We encourage all of you to try it. It's on mynutanix.com. It's live today. It takes about 2 minutes to sign up, start to finish. And we just went through this. It was one click to prepare the cluster. Now I'm going to go and configure the cluster. So logging in here. OK. And I have to put literally a couple of very basic things in. And even if I just click through this, it would all just work. All the defaults work. So what is the cluster that I want to connect? What is the network? Give it a name. Click Next. What are VM profiles that I want to have in my VDI? In the cloud world, that's called instance type. I'll just go Next. What gold masters I want to make available through Frame? I'll pick this Windows 10 image, tell Frame that this is Windows 10. And finally, I need to tell it where to connect to which of my Frame accounts and organizations. Click Finish. That's it.
Woo. As simple as that.
It's
now, where's the desktop?
It's as simple as that. And if you can see, I'm now in the Frame console. You see that the cloud account called Frame that I just created is going to, it's showing up there. It's going to be ready in a matter of seconds to provision your virtual desktop. So you can go 0 to thousands of virtual desktops on-prem or in the cloud in literally minutes.
Beautiful.
So, wasn't this a cool demo? But
now we are inside a browser.
yes, so like, we said, okay, that was a cool demo, but let us show you something even cooler. So what I have here, first of all, we're in LA and Anaheim, movies and all, so we said, like, we got to do something about movies. And what I'm running here, it's a Chrome browser, as you can all see, and I'm running inside the browser, full version of Adobe Premiere Pro. It's like a heavy-duty application, requires a lot of memory, a lot of GPU.
Talk about heavy duty, actually.
Did they ask you to learn how to use this before you join the board?
Yeah, part of corporate governance of Adobe, actually.
You need to learn how to use Premiere Pro if you're on Adobe's board. So, and now, has anyone heard about this little show called Game of Thrones? Okay. So, are you a fan?
Well, I'm learning to be one,
Okay, I myself, I'm learning as well. So this is what I heard last week, that there was an episode that was very, very dark. And people were complaining, that was a week ago, and people couldn't see anything. And this is how it looked. So by the way, this is inside Premiere Pro, Game of Thrones, playing. I can go full screen. Now, this is a projector, and there's even some music over here. This plays smoothly, 60 frames a second. It works really, really great. But then I said, oh, can we use some ninja skills to make it brighter? And no spoilers here for those of you who are watching it. And this is, again, real-time rendering in full resolution in my browser on a Mac through Frame.
Beautiful.
But then, as I was catching up this weekend, something else came up, and
it's a Pete's Coffee.
It's Pete's Coffee?
Yeah, I think so.
So, for those of you who are living under a rock and not visiting Twitter, this was a big thing from this Sunday, where someone left a Starbucks cup on the set, and I said, well, let me do this live in front of 7,000 people on Frame. What's a big deal? And, it's really easy. You basically create the mask. You say, okay, like make my cup disappear, and then I can play it here. And isn't this cool? Like, there's no cup.
All happening at the speed of light, in a desktop running in the cloud, with a browser experience.
So I'm like, some people say this might be a product placement. So if it really is, I want to ask Ben Gibson, our CMO, when this thing is a DVD, I'd like to have Nutanix mug on it. So that would be, that'd be really
Ben,
awesome.
up for the challenge? Good stuff.
So it's really, we were able to do this and get Frame to run on Nutanix, not by leveraging one single thing, but there are all these components starting from the core, and then moving on to Essentials, and then really expanding to Enterprise. So with Frame, you're getting goodness of all of these things. We are using Flow for microsegmentation and files for enterprise shares. So it's truly possible only at Nutanix. This is an example of how this great platform can help us move really fast and help us also deliver innovation to you really fast.
So it's all integrated as opposed to being a piecemeal product.
All integrated. And it's just kind of the beginning of what we are to do. So want to cap it off. This is generally available today. And we are running a great promo, 1-for-1. So buy a seat of Frame, get a seat of Frame for free if you're going to use it in AHV. So try it. It's going to be awesome.
Really important, folks, this last buy one, get one, because his bonus depends on it now. So very important. And by the way, the more you buy, the more you save. So think hard about it.
Thank you so much. Thrive Frame, it's available today.
Thank you. There's one more slide for you, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. One more slide.
While you're working on all this presentation, look at what VMworld happened. Something happened at VMworld.
What?
As well. A desktop.
They gave us an award?
Yeah, they gave him an award.
What?
Except that it's 2011.
Oh, bummer.
God.
Oh.
But if they were to call us, I know that they're not calling us anymore, but if they were to call us at VMworld, I bet we'll tweet one more of these again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikola. Okay, I think moving on, delivery. And this is the hardest one for us, really making ourselves invisible. And we've started, for those of you who've heard about, there's quite a few Leap customers now. Leap is our real leap into hybrid. The idea that you can really drag and drop an entire data center experience, compute and storage and networks and security and identity. What does it mean to really be able to drag and drop all of it from your on-prem environment to an off-prem environment with runbooks, with everything done in pure software, with automation? I think that's the final bastion of hybrid. And that's what Xi is actually delivering. We're delivering a lot of our services through Xi as well. Nikola talked about my.nutanix.com. If you haven't checked it out, please do. There's a ton of services that you can deliver. You can try to test drive on Google GCP. All our products actually work in GCP now in a nested bare metal itself. So you'll actually see a lot of value of our products coming through Xi now. This is basically the power slide, location, location, location. We've basically gone from delivering our software through our appliances to OEM to third party and robo and enterprise cloud location matters, the server class matters. We delivered our stuff through GCP, and we delivered our service through our own location of a hybrid location called Xi, for Xi Leap. And over the course of the coming couple of years, you'll see us really deliver all our value independent of the location. If you have credits in a public cloud, you'll see our value come through that as well. And if you believe in hybrid and you want Nutanix to really go and stitch this between on-prem and off-prem, you'll see desktop as a service be delivered in hybrid, which you saw some of today, but also delivered in Xi as well. It's one of our killer workloads for Xi is desktops. But over the course of the next couple of years, really see a lot of our services be delivered both in hybrid, at your location, and in your credits coming from public cloud itself. This is the money slide for the company. And this is what we mean by making cloud into pure software. But it's not really about building billion-dollar data centers and facilities, but seeping into everything that you currently have, walking over to where you are, and still having the control and the power of the control plane from where everything looks the same. As opposed to this is a silo of a public cloud, this is a silo of a private cloud, this is a silo of a hyperconvergence. Now talk a little bit about delivery. I want to call one of our newest partners, HP's Phil Davis, on stage and talk about some of the things we're doing together in the coming years. Phil. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you're enjoying the show. So far, so good. Yeah, we have a ton of joint customers and a lot of partners here together. So really appreciate you talking about the partnership. What's the what of the partnership?
Well, it's interesting. You made a reference to Henry Ford's quote, right? You can have any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah.
And I think
I bungled it up a little bit.
a little bit. I wasn't going to point that out. But that, I think, is what's going on in our industry right now, right? You can have any solution you want as long as it's my stack. Mm-hmm. And so I think the partnership is really about not being locked into a single stack, whether it's public cloud or our competition, but really about offering customers and partners choice. And so there's two elements to the partnership. First of all, for customers that are thrilled and excited and want to move forward with Nutanix, you can now consume that and buy that based on the industry's most reliable, most manageable, most secure server, the HP ProLiant and Apollo server line. So that's kind of one part of the partnership we just recently announced. The second element is we also realize a lot of customers want to increasingly consume technology and kind of pay as they go. They want to be able to scale up, scale down, and so we have VM as a service in our GreenLake consumption model based on Nutanix. And the exciting thing about that is it does away with the traditional VM tax that no customer wants to pay. So those are the two parts of the offering.
It's like Amazon Prime for Whole Foods in some sense.
Yes, right? Exactly.
Good. It's a subscription, not just off-prem, but on-prem as well.
That's correct.
Talk about services. This is one of the services that this partnership actually brings to bear with our software and your hardware. But what other services can people actually use from this partnership?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the strengths, right? How do we leverage the best of Nutanix's capabilities and the best of HPE? We have 25,000 services people as part of the hybrid IT division. That's everything from advisory. You talked a lot about hybrid. Where should the app run? Where is it most efficient? Where should the data live? Am I GDPR compliant? So we have advisory services to help customers along on that journey. We have professional services if you want us to help you go implement that, or we can implement it through our hundreds of thousands of partners around the globe. And then finally, if you want help on the actual running of it, we have operational services to make sure we take that headache away. So it really is a function of what the customer wants, but can offer an end-to-end suite.
It's more like a solution rather than point products.
That's right.
We have a ton of people from Japan here.
Yep.
And we talked a little bit about your real #1 lead in Germany and Japan and Australia, places like that. Tell us more about some of these countries out there.
Well, you know, obviously HPE is a little bit different than a 10-year-old company. We've been around for a little bit over 75 years and really went aggressive into the international markets. So this year we're celebrating our 60th year in Germany. It's a major, major market for us, since you happen to mention that, and our 56th year in Japan. We're #1 in Germany, #1 in Australia, #1 of the offshore vendors in Japan. So international is incredibly important. We have a long lineage and very committed to, I saw going around also, it seems like you have a lot of customers and partners here from Japan. So very important markets for us and deeply committed.
Beautiful.
And the full range of capabilities I alluded to in terms of services, support, et cetera.
Great. One last question. What does success look like in the next 12 months for us?
Yeah, and I think it starts from the outside in. You know, I think it starts, you know, delighting one customer at a time, right? So it really, so much you talked about was the customer experience. And so I think it really does start there. Starts with, you know, Net Promoter Score, delighting our customers. And then I think it really comes down to going out and winning jointly in the marketplace. So our joint success, we're tied together on that, is really, I think, how we'll go measure it one customer at a time.
Let's infuse delight. Thank you so much, Steve. Phil, thank you. Now, I want to end this thing on a little bit reflective mood as well. You know, we have complexity. We were doing upgrades of 2 things, AOS and Prism, 5, 6 years ago. And this is the paradox of growth, where growth creates complexity, and complexity kills growth. And if you look at upgrades in general, the growth of upgrades is it's gone from like being half-an-hour operations to, at some of our customers with large clusters, 4 or 5 hours. But this is the burden of responsibility. It's really taking care of all the servers, all the firmware, all the hypervisors, all doing it without downtime. I think this conference is about really going and getting that feedback from all of you to say, what does it mean to be awesome on the most complex of things one more time? Because our canvas is no more the simple canvas that we had 5 years ago. Our canvas is much more complicated. And the bar for Nutanix has to be about bringing the same kind of delight from our existing customers and our new customers who actually will see this complexity in front of them. But to go and make this 10x faster, like the way it was 5 years ago, is what this conference should be about. And that's what I mean by delivering something which is so delightful that all of you will say, this is the Nutanix of day 1, as opposed to the Nutanix of 10 years itself. And that's how I want to end this note, is to talk about the experience that Matt Day had. Now, Matt was talking here, the Australian accent. Matt was talking about his upgrades. He always prefers to upgrade when he's in the air, because literally he thinks it's over the air or something, you know. But he was on United and doing upgrades 3, 4 years ago of his clusters. And things have become complicated for him that he can't do them anymore from over the air anymore. And our challenge here is to really go and make it like the way it was 3, 4 years ago, with all the complexity and all the burden of responsibility, make this 10x faster one more time. So that's a promise that we're making to you, that some of the things that we were really, really, really good at, we're going to go back and make them, you know, as delightful and as awesome as they were. And the promise of the next 10 years is to do data design delivery. Just keep doing this stuff. Maybe for a new audience, though, and that's developers and DevOps. Because right now we see this big rift between IT ops and developers. We keep calling developers builders. But at some point we have to say IT ops and IT is building as much, innovating as much. So to really go deliver a lot of data for developers, a lot of design, not just from COM point of view, but in many ways what builders and developers within IT actually are looking for, and finally deliver it in the most friction-free manner, is basically the next decade for us. The more things change, the more they'll remain the same. With that, I want to actually talk about this guy. I lost all my hair in the last 10 years, trying to make it delightful, trying to bring data, design, and delivery. Well, this other guy has probably been working somewhat less harder than me or something. And he's only spent 5 years or so. Maybe in the next 5 years, as he finishes 10 years in this company, I'll hopefully see him. So, but Sunil Potti.
So, let me see how much time I have, Julie. So we're about 20 minutes behind, so right on time. So if you don't mind, because we are a little squeezed on time and we have a special guest right after this, I'm going to take my Indian talking speed and put it into ludicrous mode, okay? So you guys have seen this slide before about the vision, and when you double-click into it, when you stack our products across the 3 phases of invisible infrastructure, invisible data centers, invisible clouds, the product portfolio obviously has matured quite a bit in the last few years, and especially going from HCI into private cloud, operations, security, and so forth. And then we're, as Dheeraj was saying, in the spirit of ambition and innovation, breaking into cloud services, database services, and so forth. But ultimately, it comes down to adoption. And adoption comes in 2 vectors, as you guys know. One's on covering as many workloads as we can, and secondly, maximizing the value across these products. And hopefully, if you're able to combine both vectors together, we can make a real step into delivering a true cloud experience for our customers. And when you sort of work this into the 3-phase execution plan, Dheeraj called it data, design, and delivery. Core HCI is all about data. A private cloud, true cloud experience inside is all about design. And then, of course, our ambition around innovating on delivery to change the consumption model is where the multi-cloud services come in, okay? And so when you click into the core a bit in the first section, a couple of things to note. Especially in the last 6-9 months, we've sort of had a renewed focus on the core, both from a quality, upgrade, security, and an entire bunch of other capabilities that we have essentially, refocused a lot of our engineering assets there. And hopefully you'll see a lot of that come through in 5.11, 5.12, and so forth. But the innovation has not stopped across the features as well. So take, for example, AHV, which has now surpassed 40% attach nodes, right, every quarter going forward. We were actually at 0 in our first .next in 2015, by the way, right, from an AHV attach. And 4 or 5 years later, 40% of our nodes are now on AHV, okay? And so clearly, from a capability of the core, AOS, Prism, and AHV, there's a lot of emphasis. One thing, though, that we have done over the last few years is to really look hard into what's coming in the next few years in terms of applications being transformed. Everybody knows about cloud native, but there's also a variety of other structural things happening with respect to analytics and databases and so forth. And if you combine that with technology, because you're getting RDMA now, you're getting 3D Crosspoint, so forth, and between the combination of these next-generation apps and technologies coming together in a perfect storm, we took some of our best engineers, our core principal engineers, and tasked them with rewriting our core operating system. And that came out just recently, and you're going to see the first phases of that this year, and then we'll expand on that under the guise of this autonomous extend store, where our entire storage fabric has been rewritten from the ground up to solve for this next-generation technologies and next-generation applications. Sustained write-heavy workloads can now run and sing like we used to do before with traditional workloads. And that has led to a bunch of our applications that otherwise would not have been supported now being certified on Nutanix. SAP HANA, but also this year you're going to see a variety of these packaged applications now being supported. Meditech being one of them. You can name your favorite healthcare application that's coming next and so forth. And a lot of this is just not packaged apps. It's also enabling us to deliver a next-generation database service offering in the form of Era, so that Oracle RAC can actually now be provisioned and deployed and operated as if it's a true one-click database offering. And you're going to hear more of that later today and tomorrow on this. Ultimately, though, when you look at the core, it's now evolved beyond just solving for block storage. It's gone from block storage to unstructured data, files, objects, but also underpinning cloud-native workloads. And we finally came out with Carbon. I know if you guys remember, 3 years ago, we took a left turn when the industry was taking a right turn on Kubernetes. So we corrected direction and then doubled down on Kube. And what you now have is what we're calling enterprise-grade Kubernetes that's fully compatible, that you can now build your next-generation applications co-located with your traditional stacks on the same platform. And to offer unstructured data capabilities, clearly, files is the first type of storage that one has to consume. And the product that you know prior as AFS has evolved. It has come a long way. It's one of our flagship new products now in terms of adoption, thousands of customers already on it. And we're going beyond supporting what I would call table stakes functionality to replace your traditional filers into next-generation innovations, including file analytics, anomaly detection, and a whole bunch of features like that we'll take a look at quickly. And the twin of files in unstructured data is objects. And objects has taken quite a bit of time for us to build, because the scale of objects, as you guys know, has to be at least 100x more than blocks or files. Billions of objects is how we've structured, our buckets offering. I know good news is we're better at building products than naming them. Okay, all right. I can't bring myself to say that name again and again, but hopefully we'll change it one of these days. Structured data, unstructured data, and then we're left with one silo. The one silo that we've always had a point of view on, but we never really had a hyper-converged offering, was backup, and especially its evolution into the cloud for secondary data. So it's my great pleasure to talk about a product that we've been working on behind the scenes for almost a year now, where we are now hyper-converging secondary storage, tertiary storage, including cloud tiering, into a single offering called Nutanix Mine. And the way we've brought this out together is in conjunction with bringing together best-in-class functionality from Prism and AOS with best-in-class backup functionality that has been proven to support thousands of applications out there with our partner Veeam. And to talk more about the partnership, and we'll go into the product a bit more, let me invite the co-founder of Veeam, Ratmir. Come on up on stage, man.
Good morning, Sunil. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Tell us a little bit about Veeam. I know most people know about it.
First, thank you very much for inviting me on stage. And
you can come closer, man.
It's a great honor to be here today when you are celebrating 10 years of huge success. So I would like to congratulate everybody in the audience for being this great disruptors and builders and innovators in the last 10 years.
You guys have been around for 10 years also, right?
Yes. Exactly. So I heard that there are 6,000 people in the audience, correct?
I think a little bit more than that.
A little bit?
Yeah.
7?
Yeah, 7 maybe. Yeah.
7,000. First, it's awesome to be in the audience of the 7,000 Nutanix fans. Woo! I'm very jealous. But I'm sure there are quite a few Veeam fans as well in the audience.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Veeam and Nutanix share a lot in common, right? So we have a similar history. You started about a decade ago, and we're also with the idea to bring the very innovative solutions to our customer that we're going through the data center transformation 10 years ago. So we delivered on that promise, and now we're the respected leaders in both categories. we started as the #1 VMware backup, and now we're moving into the cloud data management. And you started as the, like Dheeraj explained, with the vision of combine the compute and storage and make it very easy and invisible. So creating this new industry of hyper-converged infrastructure. And now you are moving to the building the foundation for the enterprise cloud, as Veeam is moving and building the foundation for data management, data protection, backup in the hybrid cloud environment. So very many things in common. So very excited to be here today.
Great, great. So tell us a little bit. I know you've put a lot of engineering efforts behind Nutanix Mine, and it's a process that started sometime in 2018, early 2018. Tell us a little bit about how you think of Mine.
Yeah, so we started working a couple of years together. First, we released the Veeam backup for HV. That was last year. But in the last 12 months, we realized that our customers are looking for a very simple one-click deployment, powerful secondary storage solution. So that's when we realized that we need to work with a partner like Nutanix, who is also very innovative and focused on the customer needs. That's when the idea came about, and our respective R&D teams started working together about 12 months ago.
Got it, got it. So in Nutanix Mine, by the way, just so that you guys know, what Ratman is talking about, beyond just Veeam supporting HV and all that good stuff, it's actually a core development effort that started 12+ months ago that actually fuses Veeam as a native first-class service into the AOS fabric. So all the way from your coding, sizing, deployment, provisioning, into day-end operations and support, it looks, feels like a native first-class citizen, just like any other service inside Nutanix. Right. So thanks for all the help, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I believe our joint partners, our joint customers are looking forward for these solutions. And I heard that the early beta feedback was overwhelmingly positive in terms of the simplicity and performance. So I'm very much looking forward to releasing this solution later this year.
Excellent, man. Thanks a lot, Ratmir.
Thank you.
Good stuff, buddy. And the way that we built Mine obviously is classical and Nutanix. It's about customer choice, but adding that true one-click goodness to do it right. So as we built Mine with Veeam, we also partnered with a few other close collaborators, such as Haiku, as well as Veritas and Commvault and so forth, so that Mine is going to be delivered as a platform with the choice of multiple backup services offerings without compromising on the one-click goodness. Okay, so more on this as you guys take a look at it in the show floor as well as the breakout sessions. And then to talk about some of these products, I know you've not come to see me, but you've come to see Steve Poitras, the author of the Nutanix Bible. So without any further ado, let's bring up Steve on stage. Come on up, Steve. Buddy. So this time, we wanted to change it up a little bit because Steve's now works in HR. He doesn't work in our engineering group anymore. It's true, by the way. And so he can change his title whenever he wants. So I thought I'll take the liberty to share with you guys what these guys address themselves with inside the company. We don't call Steve or Steve Poitras or chubby guy or whatever, but we, he calls himself the dude at Nutanix.com. True story, by the way. I mean, some of you guys know this, right? So that's his email address from many years ago. And I've always wondered as to who would be his inspiration, right? Obviously, it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger or somebody. It has to be this guy. So since Friday, we took the liberty to go find something. All right. So be nice to him. He's going to be wearing the sweater and doing the demo, looking cool. Be happy. I know it's going to be hot, man, while you're doing the demo.
It's going to be pretty hot.
But be happy that I couldn't find those pajamas, by the way. All right, let's do the demo.
All right, let's get to it.
Okay. So what are we looking at, Steve?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about was one Nutanix fabric across all of your workloads. And one of the things we've made investments into the last few years is all about unstructured data. And as mentioned previously, unstructured data is really about two core types, files and objects. So with Nutanix Files, we provide enterprise-class multi-protocol file services, all on that same Nutanix platform. Now, one of the things that we've done is we've actually enhanced this with something what we call file analytics. And the key thing is really about three core areas. The first being all about intelligence. Tell me data about the data being stored in the platform. So here we can see our file analytics user interface. And in the top left-hand corner, we can actually view detailed information in regards to the files being added and removed from the platform. We can also view detailed information in regards to the data aging. Do I have a lot of newer data? Is my data getting older? As well as the associated information and details in regards to the types of data being stored in the platform.
So this is all good data and obviously details. How about actual actionable stuff, man, where you can actually show insights versus just data?
Yep. Yeah, so if you think about operations and how this has kind of changed the past few years, it's really moved from a standard continual monitoring perspective to more of an event or anomaly-based nature. So when things are going good, don't actually alert me, but when something out of the ordinary occurs, then that should be a trigger or an event for me to look further. So here within File Analytics, I can actually see anomaly alerts. So we can see this user, my good friend, Mr. Sunil.
Yeah, you got to laugh at his jokes, okay?
No, I don't try to make jokes. I try to keep it professional.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, keep going, man.
But here we can see that Sunil is actually trying to access this document which he doesn't have access to. We can also see he's deleted an abnormal amount of documents. So this could be something that we would actually want to trigger and look deeper into. Now, when we actually want to see that trigger and dive deeper, that leads me to the third point, which is all about auditability or audit trails. So we see here Sunil was trying to access this SB Jedi audition file. We can actually search for this file here. And once we search, we can view the audit. So with this audit, we can see every single operation that's been performed on this file since its creation all the way throughout its life cycle.
So basically, cradle-to-grave reporting now is built into the product.
Yep.
Good stuff, man.
Exactly.
So that's files. What about objects?
Yeah, and obviously the second piece there is all about objects. So with Nutanix Buckets, obviously we provide native object-based storage all on that same platform. And last year what I showed you was how simple it was to deploy. In a matter of a few clicks, a few wizards, and tutorials, it'll actually step you through the process to have a full object instance deployed. Now, one of the biggest things here is all about scale. So here I have an existing Nutanix objects deployment where I'm hosting around 1 petabyte of storage capacity. This is also facilitating 2 billion objects today. And this is actually just a relatively small deployment. So when we think about objects and buckets, it's really built for that huge, extreme, massive scale. The second piece there is all about security. So if I go into my buckets deployment, obviously I have native encryption support. I have all the access control and RBAC capabilities, as well as things like versioning and lifecycle management. Now, that was files and objects. The third piece there is all about secondary data. What am I doing in regards to backup and archive? And that's where Nutanix Mine comes into play. With Nutanix Mine, we combine the power of Nutanix, the scalability, the resiliency, and the performance you're used to for your primary workloads with the backup capabilities and feature sets that backup partners and vendors provide. So this is my Nutanix Mine user interface. As you can see, this is a fully integrated solution where I can view detailed information regarding my new Nutanix Mine deployment. So here I can actually see detailed health statistics on the Veeam side of things, as well as the Mine platform.
And this is about, just to be clear, this is about a net new interface that we have to build into Prism so that we can converge the operations across secondary services, right?
Yep, exactly. And the second key portion with this is all about one platform for all of my backup needs. So not only can this back up your Nutanix virtual machines, with Nutanix Mine partnering with our backup vendors, we can now provide one backup solution that not only backups Nutanix, but also my physical and bare metal hosts, as well as any non-Nutanix virtual machines. So one backup platform for all of my workloads, environment-wide.
Awesome. Awesome, man.
And I can also view detailed information regarding things like capacity utilization. One of the key things here is the scalability, right? So here I can see my source environment. These are essentially the targets that I'm backing up. I can see their utilized storage as well as their provisioned storage. I can also view detailed information in regards to how much capacity is being leveraged on the Mine platform. Now, scalability is a key thing here, so we also provide the ability to back up or tier down to an archival tier. So in this scenario, we are actually leveraging Nutanix buckets to provide long-term archival-based storage.
Well, good stuff. That's the end-to-end data fabric, and that's the Steve Poitras show. You can email him at thedude@nutanix.com.
It is actually my real email.
All right, man.
Thank you, Sunil.
And so that was the product list and so forth. And obviously, the proof is the pudding in terms of adoption. And to talk about adoption, a great pleasure to invite one of our favorite customers and partners and collaborators from HCA, Joshua. I don't know where you are, man. Come on up. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Sunil. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about HCA.
Sure. HCA is a healthcare company. We operate at over 400 points of care. We're probably best known for our 180 plus hospitals that we operate across the South and Southwest.
Got it. And how did the journey with Nutanix start in general?
Well, the journey with Nutanix started, I think, like a lot of your other customers. We had a couple of great engineers in our divisions that looked at this new product. They came out and said, hey, we need to do something a little bit different with the way that we're delivering infrastructure. And they started ordering nodes in a couple of our divisions to put some workloads on, try it out. After that, it kind of got a life of its own. We then started using it in some of our facilities to be able to provide a landing spot for applications that have to live within those facilities. Later, we implemented VDI, and as you can see here, we've really started to do a lot of different use cases with the product set. Recently, we deployed our private cloud implementation on the Nutanix product. So.
Got it. And how's the journey so far, and some of the plans maybe going forward?
Yeah, the journey's been good. You know, one of the biggest things that we wanted to accomplish with the product was to get a consistent, scalable infrastructure so that we didn't have to deal with multiple versions of hardware and dealing with what that entails from an operational perspective. So what we've been able to do is really consolidate a lot of our workloads on a standard set of equipment, and then be able to bring that consistency across a wider base of our workloads across our data centers.
Got it. And HCI, I know, started small, has come a long way, right, with respect to deployment.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, today I think we're running, I don't know the exact node count, I guess there's probably some numbers up here, but we're running this for several thousand of our VMs across our deployments, whether that's in a shared infrastructure deployment that we're planning, or whether that's for our VDIs, our PAC systems, et cetera. So yeah, we've come a long way with what we're doing, and we're excited to continue that journey.
Great stuff, man. Thanks a lot for your support,
yeah,
as always.
Absolutely.
Thank
you.
So that was core, obviously single fabric across all workloads. And we talk about elevating core, HCI, into a true private cloud experience. And one of the parallels that we tend to draw inside engineering is the fact that, okay, if you're in the Bay Area these days, everything's about autonomous driving and all that good stuff. And there's a good parallel, actually, that applies to data centers as it applies to the emerging, you know, if I can call it evolution from automated driving to autonomous driving. And if you think about a Tesla, it's probably in what they call level 2, going to level 3, even though Elon shows demos of level 6, which doesn't exist on the slide yet. But primarily, it's about using intelligence. Initially, it's about automation, some sensors, self-parking. Eventually, though, they want to bring enough intelligence into the car so that when you go home, park the car in the garage, have dinner with the family, the car is able to register itself on Uber, drive itself out, make some money for you, and park itself back, right? I didn't make that up, by the way. That's part of the vision. And so I don't know if data centers would do that for you, but there is a level of synergy there where we were in relatively low automation in three-tier land. We've come a long way, right, in the last generation, I would say, of technologies. And we are somewhere in level 3 here with cloud data centers, reasonable automation. And part of our inspiration and ambition is to actually push the bar to get to the next level of intelligence. And that's really why, if you look at our product strategy around Prism Pro, Calm, and Flow in particular, is that as you move up the levels to go to autonomic driving, autonomic data centers, you have to prioritize safety. You have to prioritize safety, right? More so than intelligence. And so that's why we're doubling down on security this year, as you will see with Flow, but we've also gotten an all-new product where Beam, which hopefully you guys have gotten a version of the cloud usage report. The guys actually came here at 5:30 a.m., woke everybody up, placed those things on your seats there. Some really good work by Beam on multi-cloud usage. Now we're bringing that power of compliance to on-prem for our Nutanix environment. And to talk about the full power of, if I can call it this, autonomous data centers, let's invite our other favorite presenter, Rajiv, on stage. Okay? Rajiv, come on up.
What's up, man?
Good. We're clocking a good speed. So obviously, Rajiv also has a Slack handle. It used to be called Rajiv Mirani, and then he changed it to the full Mirani. Okay? Not for the reasons that you might be thinking of, nothing related to full Monty or whatever, but somewhat related. This was Dheeraj's photo of him. This is Dheeraj taking a picture of Rajiv taking a picture of the cherry blossoms in Japan when there was a full moon in a day or something like that. So only Dheeraj can make those jokes. So this is a Dheeraj joke. If you have to laugh for it, just laugh for it, okay? So, all right, full Mirani, what do we have to talk about today?
All right, can we switch to the demo screen? Right, so
What?
I keep forgetting. Is that your Slack handle, or is that your
Get that off the screen.
Twitter handle?
Let's get in the demo.
Or is
man.
it that one?
Yeah, no, it's not that one. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
So
he just showed it to me like 5 minutes before the show started.
Right. No response, huh? Okay, anyway.
Just enjoy his last keynote demo presentation. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's make it good then.
Yeah.
So how do you drive a self-driving car? You essentially need some notion of policy, where you want to go, how far above the speed limit you want to drive, and you need sensors and feedback. How's traffic flowing around you, are your tire pressures up to spec, and so on. And in many ways, data centers are similar. We need policy, and we need sensors and feedback. Now, policies in the data center will be a lot more complicated, especially when it comes to things like regulatory compliance. So as Sunil said, we are extending Beam to cover not just public cloud, but also extend into the enterprise data centers with Nutanix clusters. And let's take a look at that. So I have a Beam dashboard over here. It's covering about 16 different cloud accounts at this point. So discovered a few issues. These accounts have AWS, Azure, and also our Nutanix corporate IT data center in Phoenix being monitored. And if I wanted to look at what's happening with one of these clusters, I just go into our Nutanix cluster over here. This particular application that I'm running on this cluster is a payment application, so I've configured Beam to run PCI DSS checks. There's 200 overall checks that are being run. Things like whether we have a good firewall configuration, whether we're using vendor default passwords. And within each of these sections, there's a fair number of checks that happen. So for example, one of them is whether sensitive databases are being protected from being exposed on the public internet. And we see we have some issues over here. We have 5 errors. And one of our databases, actually 2 of our databases, a prod database and a dev database, have their TCP ports open. Now, that's obviously a problem. We want to secure that. And in the old days, we would just put a perimeter firewall around this, right? But we can do better than that. We have advanced a little bit beyond that era now. What we can do is put a flow policy to microsegment these databases. So let's switch over to flow. So this is a view into the cluster, and I have a bunch of VMs running on the cluster. First thing I want to do is visualize the traffic. How are these VMs talking to each other? Now, it turns out I do have my two databases here, dev database and production database.
And this is, by the way, coming with our Epoch integration into Flow, right?
Exactly. This visualization is from Epoch. This is the NetCell technology that we acquired last year. But as you can see, the way these databases are being accessed is through VDI desktops. I have a bunch of VDI desktops, all of which are accessing both the dev and production databases. And this would be pretty normal in a VDI environment, depending on, I have a VDI farm. Depending on when I log in, I might be assigned a different desktop. I do what I need to do, but other people will use it at other times. So a simple policy here is not going to work. A policy that's based simply on the VM identity is not going to work. So we've actually extended Flow to take user centricity into account. So if I go into the security policies here, I can look at the policy I've set up for VDI. And this is now based on Active Directory groups. So for people in the marketing Active Directory group, we give them access to file servers. Obviously, marketing should have no access to databases. Our Xi reliability engineers, the XREs, have access to both dev and production databases, while engineering has access only to dev databases, not to the production ones. So this policy is currently in monitor mode. So I have a little application here that I'm running, and it's in the background essentially making database queries against both these databases. Production results on the left, development on the right. And at the moment, because the policy is in monitor mode, both of them are going through. So let's go ahead and switch over to enforcement mode. I'll apply the policy. We go ahead with that. And now, as the application makes more queries, we should start seeing it getting blocked. And I'm logged in here as a developer, as an engineer, not as an XRE. So I should not have access to the production database, but I should continue to have access to the development database. And this will take just a few seconds before that kicks in.
And all of this is something that obviously runs on AHV just because we have control over the AHV stack from an API perspective and so forth. Right?
Exactly. So it's all being done in the Open vSwitch, fully distributed. Policies migrate with the VMs and all that. And as you can see, we can no longer access the production database.
All right. So that's Floor.
Wait, hang on. There's one more thing.
OK, there's one more thing. Man, we're running out of time.
Remember, I've been asking about this promotion to an XRE. You keep putting that off.
Do I have a choice?
No, you don't.
OK.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a little script over here. It's going to actually edit my Active Directory credentials on the fly right now. It's going to add me to the XRE group. So as an XRE, I should now have access to the production database. And as you can see, Flow detects that. And now within the same desktop, with no other changes, just a change to Active Directory, I have access to the production database again.
Yeah. One-click microsegmentation in action. So that's Flow.
That's Flow. So the other thing that we have shown many times at .next conferences before is Prism Pro, and specifically our CrossFit algorithm, our machine learning algorithm, that we have used in the past to power a whole bunch of different capabilities, things like capacity planning, what-if modeling, dynamic alerts. But we have done this at the infrastructure level. One thing that we decided to do was that if you really want a self-driving data center, if you really want sensors to reach across the entire stack, you have application-level sensors too, right? So what we've done is we have taken our CrossFit algorithm, opened it up via APIs to third-party vendors to integrate into it, so we can now consume application-level
So basically, we're going beyond infrastructure visibility to now bringing application visibility in a fused way with Prism Pro. And this is leveraging a bunch of partner technologies, including Blue Medora,
including
bring
right?
a whole bunch of these prepackaged application sensors into the Prism Pro umbrella.
Right. And since I'm an XRE now, I need to go check PagerDuty every now and then. And as you can see, I've already gotten a PagerDuty alert saying that one of our databases, the amount of time SQL queries are taking, has shot up. And I can click into that, view it in Prism. And while Prism loads, because this is all integrated with Blue Medora, we actually already have a whole bunch of sources available for these application-level metrics. We have VDI desktops, we have SQL databases, NoSQL databases, even cloud platforms. So we're spanning a fairly large set of applications right off the bat. If I go and look at the SQL query over here, hang on, a second. Let me reload that.
And this would be about looking at, say, a database latency in this particular case, right?
That's right. So
And
in this particular case, it's a production database that's showing higher latencies. Just a second over here.
So this is what happens when you make jokes about me, man.
There you go.
Demos
Just give me a second.
Okay, it works. All right.
All right. So as you can see, we did see a spike in latency earlier today. I can go look at details. And what CrossFit now does is shows me the latency, but also shows me other anomalous events that were happening at around the same time. At higher disk byte usage, at lower cache hit ratio, and CPU usage also spiked. Now, we're talking about latencies going high. That's probably related to the cache hit ratio going down at that point. So why would this happen? I can look at what was happening on the system at that point. I can look at what kind of queries were running. The number of queries, the number of connections, it's been up and down, but nothing significant over here. I can see what kind of queries were running. And here there's something interesting. I have a transaction report. CrossFit has detected it's a new kind of query. We haven't seen it before. And it takes about 200 milliseconds to run, which is why our latencies may have shot up, because the cache, that's flushing out the cache. So what do? We want to continue running this query in the future. So the easiest thing to do at this point would be to increase the size of the database instance. And we can do that using our playbooks. So this is a new capability we've added to Prism Pro called XPlay or Crossplay. And it lets you create custom playbooks that can be run either in response to events, automatically when an alert happens, or manually.
So basically like IFTTT, but for the enterprise. Right?
Exactly. IFTTT for the enterprise sums it up perfectly. So I just happen to have a playbook that will increase the size of the database instance and then Slack me when it succeeds. So let me go ahead and run that. And looks like it's been successful. So if I switch over to Slack, yeah, you can see I got the notification on Slack that the playbook was successfully.
All right, good stuff, Rajiv.
Thanks, man.
Thank you again.
All right.
All right. So that was the second act. And then to talk more about how this has actually taken his data center, the entire environment, to become, I won't call it a full autonomous data center yet, but a much smarter data center than what it was before. My great privilege to invite Troy on stage. Come on up, Troy. I tried getting a hairstyle like that, but it didn't work out. So tell us a little bit about Emerson.
Oh, so Emerson is a global manufacturing and technology services leader in their space with a very dispersed workforce around the world. And with that growth that we've had through the years and on into the future, growth does bring complexity to our environment from an IT perspective, which is really what drove us to a hyper-converged Nutanix type of solution.
Got it. And then tell us a little bit about, obviously you started small with Nutanix, you had a traditional, 3-tier, vBlock, vStack kind of architecture. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be where you are.
Yeah, so in late 2017, we went on a journey to deliver a turnkey solution that had a holistic approach from a whole stack perspective, which drove us to a hyper-converged Nutanix solution that we looked at specifically for our robo edge deployments within our business. After looking at that and deciding that that's really what we wanted to do is go forward with Nutanix, we also took a step back and looked at it from a data center perspective. Where does it best fit in our data center? And we found that it really fits well in where we're going and what we want to do from a cost perspective, a simplicity perspective, and really just a production, ease of use, and scale model. So we've, in the last, actually, I think the numbers are here, in the last probably 2 months, we've delivered and migrated over 450 workloads over to Nutanix within our general global data centers.
450 workloads. Great job, man. Great job.
Yeah.
That was good stuff. Easier said than done. So obviously you've talked about simplification, consistency. I mean, tell us some material outcomes.
So
beyond getting promoted.
Yeah. Again, the main driver was simplicity. I mean, we have to make things very simple. We don't want to go in the rears and go with complexity, so we're going forward with really very simple delivery. And that's really from our edge perspective and in-house GDC today. We needed to deliver a ease of use, ease of management, easily scalable model that can be universal in a single pane of glass type of situation. It's important for our business to be able to thrive and grow as they need, and IT does not want to be in the way of doing that. We want to be able to allow that to happen, and with this technology, it allows us to get there with really good versatility and agility.
Got it. And he's one of the guys, by the way, if you ever find him, buy him a drink, he'll tell you about how he's not only virtualized compute storage and all that stuff, but he's actually one of the earliest adopters of fully building these pods that virtualize the network too, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we haven't stopped there. What we've done is we went forward with looking at where do we take advantage of calm in the environment and where it makes sense, right? We have other orchestration and automation tools and techniques, but where does that work? And then when from a flow perspective, we're looking at where does that make sense from a Nutanix global data center and within probably more so in our business, at our business edge sites. So we're looking at taking advantage of a lot of different of the features and functions.
Good stuff, Troy.
Yep.
Thanks again.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
So the second act obviously was about, this evolution of software-defined data centers. In our vernacular, at least inside the company, we call them, self-driving data centers. And that's our ambition, at least, to get to a true cloud experience inside. And then, last but not least, as we innovate with our ambition to get into the multi-cloud era, and in this, decade of multi-cloud services, we will probably take that long to get there. We have a variety of services. And you'll hear a chunk of them later today, as well as in the keynote tomorrow, between Leap, IoT, as well as Enera, and so forth. But one particular thing I wanted to highlight today was the fact that beyond the multi-cloud services that we're offering over the top, something foundational needs to happen to solve for the multi-cloud era. And what we mean by that is something similar to what we did with hyperconvergence on infrastructure has to be applied to the world of hybrid, right? And it can't just be a control plane problem. It has to be a combination of control plane and data plane. And the word that we use to describe that underpinning technology that needs to get done is app mobility. And to talk about this app mobility construct that we are now releasing in the wild now with this all-new technology called Move, it's my pleasure to invite Laura on stage. Coming up, Laura. Thank you. So many of you might know Laura from, she's one of our earliest engineers. She actually took a sabbatical. One of these days, some of us will all do that. But she took a sabbatical. She created a site called Wine and Passports. And go check it out. And she toured the world. We won't pester her with all the obvious questions of what was the worst country that you visited and all that, outside of India, of course. But
they were all great.
OK. So we were talking about app mobility. Tell us a little bit about the problem.
Cool. So typically when we're talking about hybrid environments, we're talking about applications that are living both on-prem and in the cloud. And typically the challenge has always been, once I have that data in the cloud and those applications in the cloud, which in and of itself it's hard, it's even harder to actually get that data back out if we need to. So what we're going to show today is how we're able to simplify that with Nutanix Move integrated into Calm itself.
Got it.
So if I drill down into my system here, I see I have a couple applications running. And in the interest of time, we've kicked off a migration on one of my service applications here. And we can see it's actually running in AWS Cloud with the IP address, the public IP, and the AMI instance information. And if we actually jump into the application itself, we can see that it's basically our fantasy basketball app. And we need to make some picks. We're in the middle of the playoffs. And we'll need to make some picks to, see who's going to be in the finals. So I'm gonna pick the Warriors, being from the Bay Area. And Sunil, who do you want to pick?
I don't know. I don't play or follow basketball. I guess we'll pick the military.
Military, okay. Milwaukee, yeah.
Oh, Milwaukee. Yeah.
Interesting choice. Awesome. Cool.
Same thing. Same thing. Good.
Cool. So these pics will persist on the AWS app. And if I just jump into my running migration here and do a quick cutover. All right, so we've done the cutover. So to take a couple steps back and talk about kind of what I just did there, to look at another app we have as an example, it's a similar app running in AWS. This one actually has 3 services. Again, we can see the AWS cloud and the IP and the AMI instance information. So we can easily deploy applications into AWS with COM, but again, the difficulty has always been how do we get them back out? So what we've done is we've integrated a migrate button directly into COM here. So once you click it, we're leveraging Nutanix Move on the back end from COM, and we're specifying our source application running in the cloud, and then our destination profile is AHV. And then we specify that cutover time, and that's when we actually want that target application to be live on our target environment. And so that's what we've just initiated on that other app that I showed. If we click next here, we can see the kind of visual representation of our app. The left-hand side shows it running on AWS, and then the corresponding services that would look like running on AHV. And we can also see a cost comparison here, so we can see that migrating this particular app on-prem actually saves us money due to the workload profile.
Okay. So that's obviously Move integrated with COM. Before we do any cutovers in general, obviously people would like to actually assess the cost.
Right, of course. So people aren't going to just be migrating without a plan. They're not backpacking through Central America with no plan like I was for a while. So with applications, we actually want to make a plan. So users typically you guys want to assess your environment and kind of see what your data is doing so you can make decisions based on that data. So that's where Beam comes into play. So Beam allows us that visibility into our environments across both cloud and on-prem, as we can see here. So we can see our cloud spend across AWS, Azure, as well as Nutanix on-prem. We can see our spend over time. And more importantly, we also get a workload analysis. So Beam's actually making recommendations for us where it's telling us we have 10 workloads, and 5 of those actually would need to be migrated off to get some cost savings. 3 of them could be optimized, basically stay where they are, but there's some optimizations we can do. And then 2 we can just leave as is. So if I drill down further into this, we get a kind of an overview of all of our workloads. And for example, our Archaeus app that we saw previously is here, and then as well as some other apps we have registered. So for example, if I look at one of these apps that's asking, recommending we optimize it, we can see it's running on AWS, and Beam is recommending we keep it on AWS, but there's actually some optimizations that we can do. And since we can see that workload pattern as well is very dynamic, so that makes it a great use case for the public cloud. But again, if we click optimize, we can see some unused resources and some things we can actually clean up. So we can do that all directly from within Beam, so that will save us even more money.
Awesome.
Yep. And if I actually jump back to that app, the Archaeus app, we can look at that and we can see it's a very flat-lined app. There's not a lot of workload dynamics there. It's pretty static. So that makes it very good for on-prem. And we've integrated also the migrate button directly into Beam, so you can actually kick off that migration workflow directly from there as well.
Got it. And that's just a teaser into how we're bringing hybrid cloud ops into one integrated offering between COM, Beam, Epoch, and a bunch of other things associated with Nutanix Move. So while this is going on, maybe we want to spend some time on what's actually underpinning the Move technology.
Yep, yeah, so it's essentially a 4-step process. So the first thing we do is we actually do a discovery, right? So we discover everything that's running in AWS or on the public cloud, and we take an inventory of what that application is comprised of. So we have different EC2 instances with a certain CPU and memory footprint, and then we map that to the corresponding what it would look like in AHV. So if you have like an M4 extra large or a T2 medium, that's going to map to a specific CPU and memory footprint on the AHV side, as well as we take into account, of course, the networking and the storage. Then the second thing we do is we actually provision into AHV using those numbers, so the kind of count of VMs and then the sizes of those VMs. And then the third part is actually the hard part. That's the part where we actually have to migrate all that data over. And so the way we do that is we do essentially a smart sync, or we've integrated a change block tracking driver into the software that will actually manage the changes. So once that first initial sync is done, if there's any changes that are done before the cutover, they also need to be migrated. But we're not migrating the entire VM. So if we have like a 1 terabyte or 500 gig VM, it's not going to be feasible to actually copy all that data over every time.
And I think that's an important point. I know that on on-prem VMs and technologies, obviously we have change block tracking CBT, but there is no CBT in AWS, for example, right? And that's one of the core innovations of Nutanix Move, was to create that layers that allows us that freedom to kind of move back and forth. Yeah.
Yep. So now we can see that our cutover is actually completed here. It's running here on the Nutanix cloud with an internal IP address. And so if we actually jump into it, should have our picks from that we picked earlier. So.
All right, that's the app that's migrated back. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Final leg. One more thing, of course. And Dheeraj talked about this, right? Obviously, as we are evolving into a multi-dimensional roadmap across location, services, and so forth, the evolution of the company obviously has come a long way from having an opinionated stack, running a Supermicro, evolving to supporting our own hypervisor in addition to other hypervisors and so forth. And all along this journey, though, as we have evolved with partners, and to sort of like create unique 1 + 1 = 3 kind of value propositions along the way, the biggest thing that we've done with our cloud partner GCP has been that rather than just plop ourselves as a power-sucking alien inside somebody's data centers, what we've done is actually work closely with them to actually engineer something called as nested virtualization, which allows Nutanix AOS to run as a first-class citizen, just like a GCP VM, including networking being solved, so that we can actually, or in the future, run Nutanix natively as a GCP service. And what we're launching now is Xi Test Drive, is essentially the underpinning for any POC that you might be doing as partners or customers. Under the cover is actually running on GCP. Most of our initial R&D, testing, release management, everything is now being done on GCP nested virtualization and so forth. So this will be a big new way for us to actually distribute or deliver Nutanix as a service in the future. That was one approach, obviously, that we've done with our partner GCP. The other approach that customers have come to us is that with the adoption of public clouds, especially with bare metal coming up as a first-class citizen, the other major announcement that we wanted to talk about today is that we've, very happy to announce, and Binny's going to come up and talk about the work that he's been doing for the last almost a year with a core team dedicated, working with AWS to actually make Nutanix available on AWS bare metal. And to talk about that, let's call Binny on stage.
Hey, Sunil, how are you?
All right. Binny, once a year for the demo, he dusts off the suit that his mother-in-law gave him for his marriage, right, as you can see.
Where's yours?
So make sure you pay some compliments. Now, Binny, on the other hand, doesn't have a Slack handle. He just works. He's a pretty serious dude, one of the 2 CTOs that we have between him and Rajiv and so forth. So I just thought, we'll just give you a name, Binny, right? In the spirit of giving him a Slack handle, hopefully that'll stick. We'll just call you Biggie Man, okay? All right. So what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, actually,
with respect to AWS.
I'm funny, but you don't get my jokes.
Okay, okay.
What are we going to talk about? 2 things, all right? One is customers want to expand the data centers, but they don't want to buy capacity, right? That's one problem to solve. The other is you want to move your applications to the cloud, but you don't want to change your app. These are hard problems. We have a solution. We call it Xi clusters. It's basically Nutanix clusters running on AWS, but there are 2 key things to understand about it. First is you can use your existing credits, existing account with AWS, VPN, direct connectivity, all the investment that you have done with AWS accounts, you can use that. Second, when you're running inside that account, Nutanix is running inside that account, you get access to native networking speeds between workloads on Nutanix and workloads on Nutanix talking to AWS native services, right? That comes because of the work that we have done with the AWS networking layer.
Right.
So let me show
Let's
you,
take a look.
right?
Yeah.
So here on the screen you have Prism Central. This is Prism Central on-premises that I have, and this is a classic problem. Use case number 1, right? I have a cluster on-premises, and it's running out of capacity, right? So I'm launching a bunch of desktops. I only have 26 days left. I have 2 options. I can buy more hardware, add it. Now with Nutanix, it's easy. But what if I don't want to do that, or maybe I want to globally expand? Here's how you do it. This is the easiest way with Xi clusters. So I log into my Nutanix account. This is the account that I already have. And here's a list of services that Nutanix offers. The new one is Xi clusters. I launch that. First thing you see is a world map. This is the view of all the regions where AWS bare metal is supported. And you can launch Xi clusters on any one of these. Right? So let me show you how you do that. Let me pick Oregon, because that's where I already have VPN direct connectivity set up because of my other workloads. I hit Create Cluster. I just give it a name. Say Demo 15. I pick the software of AOS that I want to run, host type, bare metal, number of hosts, 3, 4, whatever. I can start with 3, expand later. And here I'm telling it what's the IP addresses from where I'll access this cluster. So we take that and pre-program the security groups in AWS so that the cluster comes up and it is secure, right? So I hit save. And this is the important point to note. It gives me a link to launch a cloud formation, and you'll see what it means. Let me launch that. It's taking me to another tab and asking me to log in using my own existing AWS account. So we are not doing any back-end creation of accounts. It's your AWS account. You log in, and you see that the same form appears. This is a cloud formation template, whatever I had given. It asks one additional question, which is, who will be the admin, the AWS user, who will be the admin of this cluster? I pick my name, acknowledge, and I click Create. So that's it. In 30 seconds, I have actually started launching a cluster. And I go back to Xi cluster, say I launched it, and click on clusters, and there's Demo 15. It's initializing. And it'll take about 30 minutes to come up. So that's how simple it is now to expand your on-premises into the cloud globally.
Vinny just showed, just so that you guys know, he just showed creating cluster with no hardware procurement, no networking, just spun up so that it can be available 30 minutes from now.
And it's in your existing AWS account.
Good stuff, man. Let's talk a little bit about the capabilities as to how we built this as a more genuine offering.
Right. So I do have a cluster here called AWS, which has been running for a few weeks. I won't wait for the cluster to come up that I just spun up. So I'm logging into this cluster. Now, this is identical to a cluster that you have on premises that you know. This is Prism Element. And as you see, the only difference that you'll find is the hardware model. It says AWS, right? Other than that, everything is the same. I can register this to a Prism Central. Now, I can launch a Prism Central on this cluster, or I can connect it to the Prism Central I already had, right? So that Prism Central showed that I'm running out of capacity. I want to add this additional capacity there. I use the password that I use for the Prism Central. So in a few seconds, it basically registers that cluster in the cloud to the Prism Central on premises. And that happens because the VPN direct connectivity, whatever you have is already there. It's running within your AWS account, all right? So let me take you to Prism Central. This is where the problem was of capacity, right? So look at VMs there, and I see 26 VMs. Let me group them by cluster, and you'll see I see 2 clusters now, not just 1, 2. One is the AWS cluster, and one is the cluster that's running out of capacity, right? Okay, now this is hybrid cloud view, and I want to show you how you can leverage it. Assume that there are some seasonal workers that are coming in. I need to give them desktops, right? I have Citrix desktop deployed on premises. Let me launch the console there. And here you see Citrix, to save time, we've already configured it with the AWS cluster. The point here is any third-party integration over the last many years just works. I mean, this software that we are building just released, but Citrix works with it, right? So I can click on Add Machines, say about I need 10 more desktops. So you can instruct Citrix Studio to go create additional desktops here.
Additional desktops, okay.
Right. So let me wait for this to spin up.
So essentially, through console, we launched Citrix Studio. And then through Citrix Studio, we're spinning up, say, 10 desktop VMs.
Yeah, and I'm using default options here. And just with a few clicks, I've instructed Citrix Studio. Now, Citrix is running on premises. Usually, it deploys desktops on premises. Now, it's able to deploy it in the cloud. Let me show you. So you go to Prism Central here. And as you can see already, I see some VMs showing up there.
Got it.
This is Citrix on-premise deploying burst capacity into the cloud.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Good stuff. What about, obviously, enterprise-grade capabilities of a Nutanix cluster on AWS as compared to, say, security policies?
Yeah, so when you're now expanding and opening up to the cloud, you have to think about security. It's very important. So for example, here I have an Exchange VM. This is my production VM. Using microsegmentation, I have protected it against some test VMs that could be deployed by any developer. Now, I would like to show you what happens if you deploy something in the cloud, say this test VM. Let me log in there. And I'll try to sort of launch a ping attack or something on my Exchange VM on-prem. So I have a script that does that. So it's pinging. As you see, the latency is about 47 or so. This is from the cloud going back to on-prem.
Right. So he's pinging from his VM in AWS, Nutanix clusters, to a couple of VMs on-premise.
Yeah, I'm pinging the Exchange VM. Now, I do have a security policy protecting, that's supposed to protect the Exchange VM. But if you notice, it's in monitoring mode right now. It's not enforced. So what it does is it shows in blue what's expected. And in yellow, it shows things that are not expected. Now, as you see, the 172.31, that IP address is the test VM IP address. If I want to stop doing, stop those extraneous network connections, I can apply my policy now, right? So when I apply, it basically strictly enforces. This is flow security that we all use with AHV on premises. Now, if you go back to the test VM, look at the latest pings, now it's disabled. So now you can do flow security, not just on the private cloud, but in the hybrid cloud. Just like on-prem, there is no need for overlay networking, VXLAN, edge gateways, and stuff like that. The same thing is true in the cloud. The way we have done the engineering, there's no overlay, no edge gateways, no controllers needed, none of that nonsense.
And no need for 7 consoles or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? OK, let's talk about some innovative new functions as well that we have built while we were delivering this.
Right. So think about the seasonal workers coming in. I've given them desktops. Now, after some time, they want to go, and maybe they'll come back next quarter, next year, whatever. So we thought about that, got good feedback from our customers, and we've invented a new feature, which is essentially first of a kind in the industry, called hibernate and resume the whole cluster. Right? Let me show you. So this is the AWS cluster, and I can hit hibernate. What hibernate does is it looks at the bare metal and takes each disk, eliminates the zeros and dedupe, compress, all of that. Just your real data is backed up to S3. Right? And maybe a few hours later, days later, weeks, months, years later, you say, I want it back. And then you hit resume. So I have a hibernated cluster here. I can click on that and hit resume. All I need to do is to power on the bare metal instances, and you'll have your cluster back.
Got it. So this is about taking your Nutanix cluster now can become much more fungible based on your workload needs. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
So that basically gives you the benefit of cloud, the true elasticity that cloud brings in. While preserving all your IT operations and everything. So now you can expand your data center, on-premises data center to the cloud and shrink as you need. So that's the first use case.
So that was the first use case. Make sure that you can now leverage Nutanix clusters on demand, leverage the power of a public cloud, but be consistent with your IT operations and tooling and so forth, right? Make it look like another cluster, just happens to be not in your data center, right? What about the other use case where you now have an existing set of AWS VPCs or AWS services already deployed? How does the Nutanix cluster look like it's fused in with the AWS fabric?
Yeah, so when I talk to customers, a lot of them are dealing with complicated apps, right? Apps that have many components, and it's very hard to migrate all of that to the cloud. It's like, it's a hairy app, right? It's some, hairier than your hair sometimes.
Keep going, man.
And then if imagine pulling your hair between on-prem and cloud, it's going to be painful. You'll end up like Dheeraj pretty soon. So we came up with a way to ease your pain, right? So instead of taking the hairy app and splitting up into pieces, one stays in the cloud, one on-prem, and the latency is high, app doesn't work. Let's move the entire app to the cloud, right? So to show that, I have another setup. Now, this is a pure cloud setup, all right? So this is Prism Central running in the cloud. Now, one place I would like to draw your attention, this DNS name of Prism Central out there. This is exposed by AWS using ELB. So Prism Central is a VM running on Nutanix on AWS. The way we have done networking is that these VMs have IP addresses that are native in AWS. So all the AWS networking services that are available can be used with these. So not just Prism, any app, any workload that you have can use that.
While Benny is logging, what he's showing you, just so that you guys understand, is my existing services that I've deployed on AWS EC2 natively now access, as if they were on the same subnet, same VPC, the Nutanix cluster services, by the way, right?
Yeah. So I took an app that I was running on premises, and it was a 3-tier app. Let me show it through the COM console. These are the services that are running there. There are 3 tiers. There's a database tier, MySQL, WordPress, and HA proxy. I moved that to run in the cloud. Okay, COM can do that. But one thing to note is MySQL still running on Nutanix because we need the data services and all the benefits of data. WordPress and HA proxy are running in AWS. All 3 are running in the same account, using the same credits, same VPCs. Now I want to show you what's the benefit of natively integrating in the networking stack, right? So MySQL here, let me log in to the MySQL VM. MySQL is running on Nutanix. I'm looking for the console of MySQL, right? So here's MySQL, and I would like to run an iperf test. So this iperf test is targeting from MySQL the WordPress VM. If you look at the IP address that I've used, this is an AWS native internal IP address. Right? And as you can see, the performance that I've got is 16 gigabit per second. This is native speeds in AWS. That's unprecedented.
Awesome, man. So look at that. That's like native networking speeds between your Amazon services and your Nutanix services together.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cool.
Great stuff.
Thank you, Sunil.
Good stuff.